All right. Eloise, Jade, Druid, Reynad, Nazoth, Murloc, anything, Paladin.
Just throw some words into the air, and it will probably be right eventually.
Yeah, very
There's a
interesting
lot of
deck.
stuff
It's
going on.
a lot of threats going on, and the game goes long enough, or at least it should do, for him to be able to get one of those two threats to come off, whether it's the anything or whether it's the Nazoth. And that's the point of the deck. It's like put on sustained pressure.
Right.
The sustained pressure slows the game down, and then you just have these two massive haymakers, and one of which will do the work for you.
Yes, and this is an interesting hand from Reynad because on one hand, it's very good. You've got a one drop and you can hero power on turn 2 into a muster for battle, which is a pretty good start. But on the other hand, it's absolutely terrible. You've drawn an anything right off the bat, which is the one of the worst cards you can draw, and you also have a Tyrion, which you definitely want to draw on turn 8, but not having your hand from the get-go. Whereas Eloise is off to a blisteringly fast start. Coin Wild Growth into Jade Blossom is pretty much the nuts as Jade Druid against pretty much every matchup. And then with a Fandral to follow up, this is looking very nice for her indeed.
Yeah, all she needs now is a swipe, just in case this
Yes.
middle lot gets out of hand. It seems unlike... Oh, Reynard's decision here is awkward, right? If he plays the second muster, then bad things might happen.
He's leaving himself very, very vulnerable indeed to a swipe if he does go for that. For Eloise, though, it's less crucial to remove these Silverhand recruits than it would be against her own Paladin, per se, because the only cards that Reynad uses that capitalize on Silverhand recruits are Sunkeeper Tarim, obviously buffing them up to 3/3s, and to a bigger extent, the Quartermaster, which prioritizes on exactly the Silverhand recruits. However, there's no Light Fuse Stegodon, so on turn 4, it's less crucial for Eloise to get them off the board. But now with the pickup of Sludge Belcher, she could just slam that down on this turn. But it looks like she's making what I think is the correct play if she's going to go with the Fandral in playing the Jade Idol first, because naturally you think, right, I'm going to play my Choose One effect after Fandral, but you actually don't want to draw Jade Idols at this point. You'd rather draw your bigger Jade cards first.
Reynard deciding how he wants to go about this doesn't matter a huge amount, I don't think. Just clearing this stuff up. Can't let Fandral live. There's just too much going on. If they go into Nourish, you lose the game.
That's exactly it. Nourish would just be such an unbelievable blower. Even if it's not on the perfect curve of turn 5, it's still really, really powerful. And thankfully for him, he did do that because Eloise picked it up. It's still very nice for her indeed because she was starting to run pretty low on cards. So a pickup of Drake or Auctioneer or Nourish to a bigger extent would be fantastic. And that's exactly what she got. So now what Reynad needs to do is start applying pressure in this mid-game phase of the game, so that later on when Eloise starts getting her Jades down, she's just under too much pressure and won't be able to close it out.
Yeah, and he's doing a good job of that, but Eloise's hand is so insane. The Auctioneer, it doesn't look like much of a hand, but trust me, as soon as this Auctioneer gets going in, like, next turn, this hand is going to turn from a few mediocre-looking cards into a handful of massive, massive threats.
You were correct indeed, Neil, that with 2 Innovates, that is going to be, 4 mana that you can use? Oh, no, sorry, 6 mana that you can use after the Auctioneer comes down to draw a billion cards.
I feel you may need to refresh your view as well. You're like 2 seconds behind.
Oh, am I a bit behind? Right, okay.
Yeah, you'll probably go in front, but I can handle that. You just have to lead me through.
That's absolutely fine.
Reynad punching through there. Okay, this turn... Oh, okay, so Eloise has a choice now with the Behemoth. She was going to play Auctioneer and start doing stuff. Yeah, she just made sure that Behemoth wasn't better. And actually, innovate. Behemoth is still a thing she can do if she does bad draws from this Auctioneer. But it's not likely. She's more likely to just spam the board here with a whole bunch of cheap things.
Yeah, and that seems like that is exactly what she's gearing up for. Oh, I've got instead an advert for Red Bull. I forgot to install Adblock.
Alright, so while Darek is going through his Red Bull commercial, of course, Tempest
not sponsored by Red Bull, I must
doing
add.
pretty well in those events. Eloise is busy making a bigger and bigger board. Decision time now whether to Wrath the Shredder or whether to just make a 4/4 Jade, either which will draw her another card. If she Wraths the Shredder, she will be able to hero power down the 1/1, but of course, the associated Shredder risks come with that.
Yeah, you kind of got to look in Wild. I think the outcomes from Shredder are lower than they were when Shredder was around originally, because you've got more cards that feel like they're not quite as good. You've obviously got some more higher rolls now with things like Kindly Grandmother, stuff like that, which is really fantastic. But you got a whole bunch of 1/1s that have been added in with stuff like Fireplume Harbinger and stuff like that.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
Just looking at this, and
it's pretty obtuse.
Reynad has to kill the auctioneer. We know that.
Yeah.
So he's going to start off with the shredder, see what he gets. That's pretty good. Just casually get a 3-4.
I think I'm still behind even after refreshing. This is very annoying.
Interesting.
But he got another totem golem. We saw that yesterday as well. That is ridiculous.
Okay. Curious as to how that's even a physically possible thing. Well done, internet. Just well done, internet. That's all I can say at this point. All right, Reynad going very, very wide, but Eloise finally has the required swipe, and she can actually play, Azure Drake first, which is a thing we've all missed, and clear the board entirely with this swipe.
Yeah, that is absolutely fantastic. That was one of the true devastatingly powerful combos of Azure Drake, because obviously, primarily you want it for the card draw to keep the amount of Jades you've got high, but after you've done that, after it does that primary effect, getting a 2 damage swipe basically is going to be a massive board clear almost all of the time. However, with Tyrion coming down now and Eloise running no mulches in the deck, this is the shot that Reynad needed.
It is, but I'm wondering if she even cares. I mean, she cares, but I wonder if she cares very much about this, when she can just play a Panda and Blossom and just
right.
almost ignore Tyrion. The only question would be, do you spend 2 mana procking the block? I think you probably do. Procking the shield. The block. Too much freeze mage, kids.
One game is too much, it turns out.
This is how laughing will sound in 20 years' time.
Yeah, I think he's probably immune. That's his great power.
Immune to freeze mage accidents. Yeah. And Eloise keeping back that excess mana. That's not a mistake. She's doing that in case she draws the auctioneer. There's absolutely no reason to play it now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where at the start of the game you think that you should always play it as quickly as possible, but later on down the line you realise that's often not the case. And the second anything being picked up before any Murlocs have been played, or maybe one Bluegill Warrior, is that it?
I think we've seen one Bluegill, that's all I can remember as well. In a deck with 6 Murlocs in it, I think Finch is in here. The other 5 definitely are.
Yeah. And it's kind of unfortunate that, a Bluegill Warrior it's all right for 2 mana, but for 10 mana, you're probably not going to play that.
10 mana 2/1 charge, which allows you to play 2 2/1 charges the next turn.
Wow. Stronger than it would seem.
Really, really powerful indeed. And Tarim having to come down early, obviously that is not what Reynad would have liked, because he would like to transfer these huge golems later into 3/3s rather than now. But sometimes necessity means that you have to do things you do not like. So Eloise working out whether to cycle the excess mana first, or if she actually needs any other cards. This hand looks pretty versatile without even worrying about another card in your hand.
Yeah, you've already got so much stuff to do, and that's what you need to worry about, because you have cards in hand, so you don't want to get greedy with using your cards for less value just to draw more cards. So Eloise needs to play quickly at this point. She needs to make sure she keeps up on the board so that there's no chance of falling behind, because I don't believe Reynad is running equalities in his deck. He is not. So that means that the comeback potential is severely hampered if he falls behind.
Yeah, of course. You say that like there is the N'Zoth and the anything, but neither of those two are going to be very active. We've only seen, I think we've seen one Shredder and one Tyrion, which is okay from a N'Zoth, and just one Bluegill that we were just laughing about. So nothing there for him. And now Eloise, I suspect, will cycle this excess mana unless she thinks she's going to nourish. But I think she could do more with the excess mana.
Just depends on what you think the average card off the top of your deck is. If it's enough to fill out complete, or at least decently well, with the 3 mana
lethal.
from Jade
While
Blossom.
we're talking, it's just lethal. Casual 15 damage to the face.
Yep, right you are. With the
I think that we won't cycle the excess mana. We'll just kill our opponent. How about that?
Yeah, interesting strategy, to say the least.
Double Fell Rage to the face for 8, plus 1 is 9.
Oh my god. And if you actually put your ear to the ground, you can hear Reynad grumbling right now through time, even though this is a pre-recorded event, drawing 2 anything can happens after only getting 1 Bluegill. That is truly never lucky rubber ducky.
Yeah, the way the deck is constructed, he should... I'm so done. He should be able to reasonably consistently have a strong turn 10 play. And yet, every time we've seen it so far, that has not been the case.
It definitely has not. Very unfortunate of him. But in the first day, we did see the power of that anything coming through because it absolutely won him the game in a seemingly quite poor position. But hopefully he can get it at this point. It really does feel like Finger in this deck is even more crucial than it can be in some other kinds of Finger decks because it just enables not only a huge board swing with Finger, but it activates 2 late game cards that you have that are pretty dead otherwise, as we saw earlier on. But now Reynad with a pretty similar start in the 1-drop into, it looked like Hero Power into Muster for Battle, but here he picks up the Haunted Creeper. So now this is looking like a much more effective, aggressive start for him.
Yeah, although one of the best ways to deal with aggressive starts back in the day was Imp Gang Boss, so good at making those 1/1 tokens that kill 1/1s. And now Reynad, does he feel lucky? Does he feel about the Hellfire? Because if he's willing to go Muster into Quartermaster, everything's going to be so rosy for him. But we can see that would not last that long.
Yeah, so we can see that Eloise is running a Demon Wrath, which isn't unanimously run in the Reno Lock list. So that is another reason to not go for the Muster for Battle. I believe Reynad has probably done his homework. He knows that she is running that. So instead he's going for the Cog Hammer, as well as the fact that it helps him to deal with this Imp Gang boss a little bit more effectively. You don't want to commit too many 1/1s because then the Imp Gang boss will just start eating them up one by one, and you're not really in a position where you can finish your opponent off in the next few turns. So that Imp Gang boss would have done tremendously well if he'd left all these 1/1s on the board.
Bit of play and counterplay here. Reynad's trying to work out, because there was no AoE last turn, would Eloise have used AoE even if she had it? He decides no, she would have played as she has, more carefully, holding onto her resources, and so he doesn't blow his load and just go all in with his Muster either. Everybody just being very cagey in this situation.
This is a pretty nice setup from Reynad as well against Hellfire, because although all his minions obviously do die to the Hellfire, it's also in a decent spot because all of Eloise's minions would die as well. She'd be left with only a 1/1 imp, so meant it's not too effective against what he's throwing down. This play from Eloise taking the value trade on his smaller spiderling, what are they called? Haunted spiders? Spectral spiders.
Yeah, they're 1/1 dude things.
1/1 dude things. Yes, exactly. It was good because it meant the value trade was taken from the Gang Boss, but it also means that the Cog Hammer can finish it off. So this Shredder is still alive and chugging away.
Interesting that Eloise has basically been able to hold this off without the use of her hero power.
Ah, very true.
She's, normally the whole reason you can fight back as Reno Lock is you cling on for dear life and then you just go hero power, Reno, win. But she's actually been able to hold on just with the cards in her opener.
So now that Cruel has been drawn, there's going to be the potential for a devastatingly powerful turn on turn 9. You could even just opt to not get the Battle Cry of Jaraxxus and get it on the board as a 3/15, because then all of a sudden, when you draw a Defender of Argus or any way to apply Taunt to that Jaraxxus, it is almost impossible for Reynad to get through it, given that there is no equality in the deck. It's going to be tremendously powerful and difficult to get through outside of Sunkeeper Tarim or I suppose Keeper of Alderman. So it's actually easier than I suspected.
Sure, but a 3/15 is still pretty tough, and there's other things you can do. If you're having to use up your keepers on Jaraxxus, then there's still plenty of other issues you've got to deal with.
Yeah, tremendous amount of threats being run in Eloise's Reno Lock. As we can see, it runs the full Demon 9-drop package in Mal'Ganis, Jaraxxus, and Cruel the Unshackled, the 3 amigos of the Nether.
Again, apologies that I did not do my research on the Kazakus potions. I used to know them in Chinese, and then we didn't do any Chinese casts for a while, and I haven't looked them up. So as far as I'm concerned, that is a 5-mana mystery potion at this point.
It's more exciting that way. A little bit of je ne sais quoi about this cast.
Je ne who? I don't know. Anyway.
A lot of je ne sais quoi, I think, is going on in this cast.
Turns out there's a 5/5 minion coming and killing things. That seems good to me.
Yeah, so that is going to be the almost perfect one for Eloise. The Resurrect 2 would have been a lot worse because many imps were generated by the Imp Gang Boss, so that obvious anti-synergy was not worth going for the Revive, even if that was presented to her. And now with the Tyrion coming down on turn 8, it's a fantastic position for Reynad, because it means even if some kind of a clear comes down, that Ashbringer technically represents lethal over the next few turns anyway. Obviously, with Anti-Keelbot, Reno, and Mistress of Mixtures available in the deck, as well as Jaraxxus, it seems unlikely that it is going to finish Eloise off.
Yeah, but it's going to get her really low. This is going to be kind of close to the wire. Reynad almost out of resources, but the ones he's got are very strong. Eloise has healing, but it's all a bit muddy. So she's going to have to tread very carefully these next 2 or 3 turns. And it looks like she's got enough stuff to get through, but she is going to have to not make a single mistake, I think, here.
Yeah, very tough in this position because obviously as Reynad, you very, very often have the tools you need to pull yourself out of these sticky circumstances, if I remember the deck correctly, but you do have to not misstep because as we've said, this does have the potential to bring it down to a tremendously low health total if she doesn't leverage her healing correctly. And so this does mean that on this turn, Tyrion is able to attack into face, and Finger is a fantastic card to pull off the top, given that I believe only one Bluegill warrior, and a Murloc war leader.
Yeah, that's what I've got it written down as,
right,
one of each. So that would leave him with one of each plus Old Murkai.
Exactly, and basically you want to get out as many non-Murkai Murlocs out of the way as you can at the start. Obviously, it's never great to draw them. However, just getting the maximum potential to get Murkai is your best shot. However, going with the Twisting Nether here completely denies any potential for Finger. And I guess that makes sense because that was one of the ways that Reynad could just get an absolute blowout victory, because what this does is it not only negates the power of Finger now, it absolutely decimates the power of anything can happen if it's drawn.
Yeah, and this is really looking bad for Reynad, but again, we keep stressing he has the N'Zoth. He does have also got those are words.
Lorinda speak am very good.
He also does have the anything can happen, so still 2 10-drops to get him out. But Eloise is starting to get the board into a terrific state now, and when the end comes with this deck, it comes fast, and she's actually got lethal set up here.
Just look at the power of this Cruel. Getting a Doomguard out for no discard, as well as the 7/9, as well as the Jaraxxus. You are perfectly happy to not bring your health total down by 9 and instead get a 3/15 on the board. But as I said earlier on, Sunkeeper Tarim is one of the few ways you have to deal with that in this deck, bringing it down massively in terms of stats on the board. And Reynad can just go for a complete clear in this situation if he wants. I don't believe there's any demon synergy in the deck outside of the obvious Cruel Unshackled pulling them out of your hand, but once they're on the board, I think there's no real reason to clear them off and just let the Sunkeeper Tarim soak it instead.
Shadowbolt into Hellfire looks like a rather strong proposition here with Reno Jackson in hand.
Things working out not perfectly for Eloise, because you would obviously much rather sacrifice off the Cruel or the Unshackled and then go for the Hellfire. Maybe if you tap first, you can pick up a Mortal Coil to make that trade truly perfect. But outside of that, it's looking a little bit awkward, but the Hellfire is still pretty fantastic to take out these Silverhand recruits.
Yeah, when you know your opponent is running out of stuff. Of course, having the hero power for Reynad is still a plus, and we keep saying he's got those 2 big 10-drops that can just turn this game around at any point. Especially the N'Zoth, even though it would only get back Shredder and a Tyrion. It doesn't sound like a lot, but actually those 2 guys have such powerful death rattles that is a huge amount of stuff. And Eloise is just going to try and clear up here.
I do want to retract an earlier statement I just said. There is obviously demon synergy in the deck in Mal'Ganis. I kind of forgot that it gives the +2/+2 to all other demons, as it's the often lesser used effect outside of making your hero immune. But yes, that is a reason to clear off demons from the board, in that you can go Mal'Ganis to buff their attack up to 5. But given that it had to be tapped into, obviously it's 9 mana, so you cannot hero power in the same turn. And things for Eloise there really not working out fantastically.
Yeah, she was really expecting there not to be a high health minion in the deck, and she could have got lucky and hit the N'Zoth or something, so it was definitely the right thing to go for, but as you say, did not work out as intended. Should still be okay for a turn or 2, but going to have to now do things that she'd rather not have had to do, and I'll be back in about 10 seconds.
Go for it. So, a little bit awkward here now that the Kazakus has already come down, because Bran Bronzebeard is severely limited in what it can do. Looking at the battle cries left in her deck, it's a lot less good. Defender of Argus, I believe, is still there, unless she's used that earlier on. But basically, now that Kazakas is gone, that Bran is looking a lot less powerful. But Reno is a pretty good stall card at the very least. But now that you can sacrifice off that Bluegill warrior, this anything is perfectly reasonable. You are going to get two war leaders, a Bluegill warrior, and a Finger, if I recall correctly.
It is indeed that lineup, or that's at least what I make it as well.
Brilliant.
Which is probably a good sign. Obviously, you can waste your first anything as well. It's not like the newish version, which is now rotated out as well, where you have to panic a little bit.
Right.
Having anything just is plenty. Look at this. There's still another one to come later. And from nowhere, Reynad has gone from looking like dying to having every chance of winning this if Eloise can't find a solution very, very soon.
So obviously, even if Eloise had it in her deck, which she does not, the combo wouldn't be able to save her at this point because there is a taunt in the way. That Shadow Flame is nice if she can pick up something to use along with it. Mal'Ganis is obviously way, way, way too expensive to use on the same turn. What could she tap into? If you can tap into Voidcaller, that would be interesting because you play Voidcaller and you Shadow Flame it. It's just a little bit short of killing most of these minions. However, it does pull out the Mal'Ganis, which makes things a little bit more interesting in terms of trades.
Yeah, and that was pretty good spot by you there, but does not appear. And now Eloise is just going to have to try and survive so she can draw into it maybe next turn. The problem now is, of course, she has an extra demon in hand.
So, given that you want to kill off a war leader, Siphon Soul doing effectively the same thing as Shadow Bolt, just gaining you 3 health for 3 mana, which doesn't really feel quite worth it. But going for the Blast Crystal here on the other one, this does massively reduce the amount of damage on board. But this is a big investment against 3 mana minions.
Finger doing that thing that Finger doesn't do very often, actually just attacking face.
Oh my lord.
You know you're in trouble when the Finger's going to your face.
That's when you're really screwed. Mortal Coil is nice just to get a cycle because you then do have the opportunity to play Mal'Ganis if things don't go your way.
Abyssal, though. That's going to clear a lot of this stuff up as well. Actually represent a chance at winning the game.
That's true. That's absolutely the play, isn't it?
And now Eloise in such a good spot, and Reynad gives it up, and Eloise takes a 2-0 lead.
Wow, what a play from Eloise there. That was so close. But Reynad, he did just leave himself in a position where he was vulnerable to big sweeping AoE like that. He didn't really have any choice because he had to play the Anything, given that it was pretty much the only card in his hand and was a very, very powerful play indeed. But Eloise fantastically played towards the end there.
I believe she had the opportunity to do it the turn before because I was looking at it and wondering what I was missing.
Right.
And she chose to just not do it, which meant that she caught even more minions in the AoE. Eloise showing very patient play whenever we've watched her over the whole of this tournament so far.
And that is risky because against Reynad's deck, where you have the constant threat of anything can happen, playing safe and patiently can just lead to your doom. But in the end, it works out very, very nicely for Eloise.
2-0. Eloise is 0-1 in this event, I believe. No, she won earlier today, right? Yeah, she won earlier today. So she's 1-1. Reynad is 0-2, and obviously, well, 1 win might be enough. 0 wins is not, because it means that everyone would have beaten you. So Reynad desperately looking for this win now, and we're going to see this really slow-looking Shaman take on Jade Druid. This one could be a longer one.
This is far and away my favourite deck out of all the ones brought from Eloise. This is a Control N'Zoth Shaman that runs both Kel'Thuzad and Reincarnate. This is all in on the Death Rattle synergy. You are just hoping to play your Sylvanas, and then you Ancestral Spirit it, and then you Reincarnate it, and then you play Kel'Thuzad, and then you play N'Zoth. There's so much cool stuff that this deck can do. But you have to not die in order to get those combos off.
Right. Yeah, not dying sounds easy and should be easy, all this stuff, but against Jade Druid with a ramping start and a bunch of Jades, which is what Reynad has, not dying can be a lot harder.
Yeah, things looking pretty fantastic indeed for Reynad. Obviously, you want to get the wild growth into Jade Blossom rather than the Jade Idol, but you really cannot complain with a start like this, curving out almost perfectly in terms of mana played, and then you can follow up in a couple of turns with the Jade Behemoth as well, which means your Jade cards are incredibly powerful towards the start of the game, and no real powerful AoE picked up from Eloise until that Volcano, but that's quite a big investment to a mid-sized board like this.
Yeah, and already looking like that Volcano is going to be needed if Eloise can't pick up an AoE spell, or like a real AoE spell, not a Volcano, which is
right.
A board clear entirely as opposed to just killing your opponent's stuff.
Sure.
And she's already down to 18. Reynad trying to mulch his own face there, representing something, I think.
So, trying to mulch his own face. Very interesting play from Eloise to not go for the Barnes on the previous turn, because what you're thinking is if you pull out something like an Earth Elemental or a Sludge Belch or something like that, you want to be able to play Ancestral Spirit on it on the same turn, because then you get back the full statted minion, not the 1/1. So she's thinking, I am being a bit greedy here, I'm not fighting back on the board at the moment, but if I am going to win this game, I have to be a bit greedy. I have to get that crazy synergy with Bran into some kind of a high roll and Ancestral Spirit on top of it.
Yeah, nicely worked out. Also gave her the option if Reynad played yet another Jade to Volcano without killing her own stuff.
Sure.
So I'm sure your reason is the main one, just a nice extra bonus therefore that she did have the Volcano available. And obviously the key when you're playing this sort of deck is not to panic too hard. But she does need to panic fairly soon because this is now becoming an emergency.
Hearthstone advice from Lorinda. You need to panic fairly soon, you know.
You have to plan your panicking in advance.
Okay, plan your panic. I like it. But now you are now on the turn where you can go for that Bran into Ancestral Spirit, and maybe you're in such a dire spot that you have to get some kind of a high roll, and that seems like that is exactly what Eloise is looking for. Goes to the Bran, pulls out Earth Elemental, so you can give yourself a 2-mana 7/8 if you want to go for that.
At the moment, it's not enough if she doesn't hex something. Reynad has 8 damage on board, plus he has Innovate Living Roots, plus double mulch. He will be able to do all of those things in his hand to get through for a total of 11 if you count his face as well, if he wants to.
And the thing is, from Eloise, can you really afford to hex that? Do you just have to assume that your opponent doesn't have the mulch?
Yeah, she managed to get rid of them with the couple of things with the Maelstrom Portal, so she's still alive. But Reynad is going to be able to get through stuff with the mulch. Oh, actually, she didn't play the spirit.
That's right.
Choosing to kill the things. That's where the mana went. I'm good again.
You're good. So didn't overload, obviously, because pulling the Earth Elemental from your deck does not overload you. So does now have the potential to use the Ancestral Spirit in a similar fashion. We could see Earth Elemental into Ancestral Spirit. But against Reynad's hand, it would actually be better to go for Sludge Belcher into Ancestral Spirit, because those mulches would make quick work of both of those Earth Elementals.
Yeah, and this is just going to be it. Double mulch going to get the work done here this time.
You can hex, but even then, you are right. That does not stop this game from going in Reynad's favour.
Mulch, face, innovate, living roots in some order.
Also, tiny misplay, but Eloise did miss 1 damage with the young Dragonhawk there. Because it has Wind Fury and she didn't attack face. So you're looking unlikely to win this game at this point, but a consideration nonetheless.
Yes, could have killed the frog.
Yep, true. Could have killed the frog. That's more relevant than attacking face. That could actually make a difference.
But yeah, we can see that it's not going to. Eloise now 2-1 ahead, and the deck that you love just getting destroyed by a rapid Jade Druid start.
Yeah, unbelievably fast. That's kind of, people often, I think it was referring more to the combo Druid of old, but people used to say that, Druid was just a trumped up face deck. That's all it really was. It uses stuff like Wild Growth in the early game, but really, you're just hoping to smoke your opponent down pretty damn quick, and that's exactly what that Jade Druid was doing there, curving out almost perfectly. And the fact that the Shaman was doing basically nothing for the first 4 or 5 turns of the game is just too slow.
One of the reasons that people have argued about Druid throughout history as to what it is and what it does is because outside of the top maybe few hundred pros who have played millions of games of Hearthstone, well, tens of thousands, most people have probably played 100 or 200 games of Druid, maybe 500, maybe 1,000. And everybody's experiences with Innovate is very different. So, if you play 500 games, some people have really good innovates, some have really bad.
Right.
And so when you say it's a trumped up face deck, the reason everybody can't really decide is some people have had a good run with innovates and wild growths over their whole career, and some have not.
Sure.
And so that's the reason that Druid is around a 50-50 deck, but no against everything. Obvious exceptions and meta considerations.
Yes.
And nobody's really sure.
It's true. It's very, very interesting. And even though you keep the core of cards like Wild Growth and Innovate, Wrath and Swipe, things like that, it does change somewhat. It's obviously very different now to the combo Druid of old, is very different to the Malagos combo Druid with Arcane Giants that was around the Karazhan era. You can take that core ramp package and apply it to a lot of different situations.
Yeah, I mean, just those cards are so powerful. If they were in Rogue, they would all be banned.
Right, yeah.
It's just, you can't have Innovate and Wild Growth in Rogue. It would just be completely absurd.
Yeah, of course.
It's silly enough in Druid, but obviously the way the game is designed means they're just about balanced.
Like that thing of people saying if you had Fiery War Axe in Zoo, that would absolutely break the game forever.
Please. I heard that one, but yeah, I'll have some of that.
So here for Reynad, you've got your fantastic 2-drops in the Loot Hoarders, but against Lost in the Jungle, they line up pretty terribly. And so he's thinking, even though I could get the draw going right away, it's more important to fight back against the board with these hero powers, and maybe I can utilize the slightly higher attack value on the Loot Hoarders later on down the line.
Yeah, just going to try and get everything you can out of this. You quite often don't play in a lot of matchups your Acolyte on 3 for this reason. Like, it gets killed in one shot, but taking that chance if it had paid off fixes your curve, like you say, more value from 2 Loot Hoarders in one turn next turn, and sometimes you just have to fix your curve. There's enough card draw that it's not too important.
Absolutely. And so from Eloise now, all she is looking for is some kind of Silverhand Recruit synergy card. She runs a lot of them. It could be the Steward of Darkshire, it could be Lightfuse Stegodon, it could be Quartermaster, it could be Sunkeeper Tarim. There are so many things that are absolutely fantastic with her hand at the moment, but she needs to find one of them, because on their own, these little Silverhand Recruits probably aren't going to be enough to apply enough pressure to close out the Freeze Mage in the mid-game.
Yeah, the Silverhand Recruit thing is just really interesting to me. The fact you have to keep dealing with them, but at some point you might as well just give up and say, well, I can't. It's not happening. I can't keep dealing with them. Go ahead, Quartermaster me. But if you do that, you are just asking for trouble, obviously.
And then it begs the question, if you're going to give up at some point, like maybe you just shouldn't start in the first place, especially with Freeze Mage, a deck that very often just ignores or freezes minions on the board, instead opting to amass their own combo, which is starting to look pretty apparent for Reynad. He's already got the Alexstrasza in hand and has got a decent amount of burn with the Frostbolt, Torch, and Fireball. And there's not too much healing in the deck for Eloise, only being the Ragnaros Lightlord and the 2 True Silvers. But there is already that all-important, one of the most important cards in this matchup, Ragnaros Lightlord.
Yeah, this whole tournament, by the way, the format has changed 2 or 3 times. And so it's pretty much a test of who are the best players who can think on their feet. If you happen to play some Wild, that's great. But a lot of these players didn't know until very close to the time exactly what the format was going to be. They knew it was probably going to be Wild. And so practicing for this tournament was difficult. So we are seeing who can adapt, no pun intended on this occasion, the quickest to a new format.
Of course. And Reynad taking a really cool line of play here. He realizes your board is filled up with pretty much the weakest minions it's possible to get in the game at the moment, outside of a Hexed Frog. So you know what? Go for it. You can't play any of your synergy minions to go along with it. The maximum you can do is play the Spike Ridge Steed to buff up the attack. And even now, this is 9 damage coming in a turn, which is a lot, but it's a lot less than could be coming through. And also, they cannot play the Ragnaros Lightlord. So if you can find the time to finish them off by shooting stuff off to face, this game's yours.
And it's a very Reynad thing to notice as well.
Yeah.
He's very, very good at these intricate, unusual positions. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's like, well, you just aren't killing me with this lot.
Go for it.
He's going to get hit in a minute for a lot of damage, but okay, when he starts getting even lower, he will start taking action.
And that's what he's thinking. He has the Frost Nova in hand, which, given his line of play, is way better than the Blizzard. You do not want to kill these minions. You just want to stop them from attacking you, because then that doesn't free up any space for your opponent to play minions.
That's one way of stopping your opponent playing quartermasters and other stuff.
Yeah.
Just don't let them have space for it. Let's see if this works out for him. Obviously, this turn he's hardly taking any damage as a net result of that armor.
And it is going to be the fact. So he's going down to 11, which means that with the 9 damage on board and the Consecrate, this is a block pop on the following turn unless he freezes the board, which is a little bit unfortunate. Oh, well, with the Vine Cleaver, this is easily going to be a block pop.
But it bought him 2 turns.
It did buy him 2 turns. And maybe from Eloise there, it was actually worth considering not doing anything, because then Reynad might make a play where he allows you to pop the block, whereas on this turn he's definitely not going to do that. Whereas if you don't show that you can, maybe he lets you do it.
That's pretty next level, but yeah, I think you had to.
It's worth considering.
Yeah, I'm sure she would have looked at it as well, but yeah, that is interesting. But now Reynad's bought himself some time. Eloise has done nothing wrong. She's used resource as well, and it's all about whether Reynad can get what he really would like right now, which is his Emperor Thaurissan.
I really like not frostbolting here from Reynad as well, because with the attack in with the Vine Cleaver, a Consecration does not pop your block. It's going to have to be a double Consecration, which I think is pretty fair to assume your opponent does not have. You can't really play around stuff like that and assume that you will win. And you're really going to need a fair amount of damage coming in on the following turns, because it very, very much looks like Alexstrasza is going to be the way that you are going to deal enough damage to take out your opponent. And Reynad lines up that offensive Alexstrasza right away.
Yep, 15. So Fireball off the top would be lethal. Eloise has to assume that it's there, so she has to play the Ragnaros to get out of range.
Very easy play this turn.
She knows there's probably no silly Kobold kill because there's been no Emperor. And so just getting out of range is fine.
However, in this situation for Reynad, that Fireball is effectively 8 damage, because you can take out the Stegodon and then attack interface with Alexstrasza. But I guess in that position, you have to think, is that actually what you want to do? You have to deal with this Light Lord in some way. That doesn't mean you have to kill it, however. You can simply Blizzard this board, which means that 2 minions are damaged, and then there's a very decent chance the Light Lord simply does not heal Eloise's face.
You can even Ice Lance the 2/6 and get through for 8 to save your Fireball at that point as well.
Very true. Very true.
Allows you the time that you need to play your block and put Eloise back down to that magic number of 15, which is Fireball, Fireball, Frostbolt.
And that's exactly the play that Reynad is going for. He realizes that he can't really afford at the moment to invest the damage in killing off that Rag Light Lord. He needs instead to pray that this does not heal Eloise's champion, and instead, or hero, I should say, not champion, hero.
Wow.
And instead heals itself, because he is very, very close to dying and needs to get lucky. But that, oh my goodness. That can guarantee... Oh, I punched my microphone. That can guarantee the heal on Eloise.
Yeah, this is going to remove the damage from the Rag Light Lord, which means that Eloise can heal her own face again. It's a trick you see with the quality a lot. I'm not seeing the Tarim so often. And Eloise spotting that and putting herself in a very, very strong position now.
Absolutely fantastic play from Eloise there. It's something you could potentially miss, because, as you said, I haven't seen that interaction either, but it does work out perfectly for Eloise, and I think that basically means that this game is locked out in Eloise's favour.
Yeah, for the second time we've seen Reynad playing Freeze Mage today. Both times he's actually run out of resources, which is spectacular, really, because it just shows how aggressive or how relentless, not necessarily aggressive, these wild decks can be.
Okay, so I said it locked it out in Eloise's favour, but we can see that there is an ice barrier in play for Reynad. So only a Consecrate could actually kill him on this turn, because any other attack has to activate the ice barrier. So on this turn, with the Doomsayer down, you've got to think pretty carefully about how you want to play this. You could just play the Tyrion purely for the Ashbringer, which is pretty respectable, because that's going to be very, very powerful in the coming turns. But that, once again, doesn't actually set up to kill your opponent on the following turn.
Yeah, and you need to, because even though you're on 23, this evolved Kobold build of Freeze Mage can do overwhelming chunks of damage. There's still an Emperor Thaurissan, there's an Intellect in hand to get it with, even reducing 1 or 2 cards in cost, and then maybe getting another Arcane Intellect. Suddenly Eloise could find herself in a reasonable amount of trouble, although obviously at the moment is still the overwhelming favourite.
I think overall it's worth playing the Ashbringer because you need to do something on this turn,
Right.
I think, and you have other stuff to do in the coming turns. That's not really your concern. Your main concern is just being bursted down. We've seen the Rag Light Lord come and go, so the only healing left in the deck is going to be the True Silver Champions from Eloise, and with this much burn being picked up, she's going to have to find it pretty soon.
Yeah, for Reynad, I think his only play here is to stick all this into the face.
I think you probably Fireball and Hero Power rather than going for double spell, but maybe he disagrees and would just rather get the damage in now.
Yeah, he's only on 9 if you count the armor, so he's dead in 2 turns to this Ashbringer.
Right, so this gives you the top deck of Roaring Torch. Okay, I like this play. Yeah.
Yeah. The other way, you'd be relying on Frostbolt. I don't know if
Yes.
both have been used. We've definitely seen one, but it probably would get you through. So let's see what he top decks.
Eloise with the Lothar.
Yeah.
Once again, the perfect card that she needed. If she plays that, she will win. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's really pretty much impossible for Reynad to come back from this one. He's got to do too many things in one turn. Can't do those things, and Eloise takes a 3-1 lead.
Whew. Magnificently done from Eloise. That was actually much, much closer than I anticipated it to be. With the Reynad play making some pretty nice plays to not kill off the Rag Light Lord, but instead attempt to simply damage it and confuse it enough to get that damage into face. But there was the one card that Eloise could get to guarantee that heal to face in the Sunkeeper Tarim, which she managed to get. And then after the fact, it looked like with Reynad had out before that Lothar came down, the true bane of Freeze Mage.
Yeah, Lothar. Everybody. I mean, it's great, right? Freeze Mage is back. Lothar's back. Everything's fair. Wild seems to have this tendency for everything to work out just nice like that. So now Eloise needs to win with the deck that you like, this Control N'Zoth Shaman with Barnes and all sorts of weirdness going on.
It does indeed, and the deck's left for Reynad. He's got a Freeze Mage, and let's just look at the Shaman for Eloise. The only heal it's running is Healing Waves, which is a lot. That's 28 potential healing altogether, but you have to find them.
Right, but the thing is that Freeze Mage, one thing it doesn't do is win quickly.
Right.
Eloise is going to not put that huge amount of pressure on, most likely, so Reynad will also have his time, but the Freeze Mage is going to be able to find those heals. But maybe this version of Freeze Mage can actually just win in one turn and bypass the healing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Given that this is the deck that runs Evolved Kobold, you are in a spot to potentially amass a true one-turn kill combo. And that was often the way you'd win against classes that can't gain armor before the rotation of Emperor Thaurissan. And so that might just be Reynad's game plan. He's got a very respectable amount of draw at the start. Loot Hoarder into Acolyte of Pain, which is not going to die on this turn, is very nice indeed. However, Eloise has managed to reduce that healing wave, which could be absolutely fantastic.
You're saying she'd have trouble finding them. She probably wishes she hadn't.
So this gives you the potential to perhaps go N'Zoth Healing Wave on the same turn to both get yourself out of range of dying and threaten lethal on the following turn. So reducing that could be very impactful indeed.
N'Zoth 1-1 just looks sad.
Oh, that is pretty garbage.
Reynad doesn't get much information for that other than N'Zoth isn't in hand, which is just no use to him at all. So everybody's happy or unhappy with that pull.
Exactly, and obviously deck lists are public, so he knows exactly what kind of shaman this is, and probably could have figured it out from the last game anyway.
Yeah, very much so. Bard is just such an interesting inclusion in this deck, and I can see why you like it so much. Eloise does have the choice here if she wants to coin out Cairn. Obviously, she'd probably rather wait until she can put the Ancestral on it, but if she wants to keep some pressure coming, there's an option to play Cairn here.
It's true, it's definitely worth considering, but I think, you know, when she played Tyrion into the Doomsayer last game, it was because she had a whole bunch of stuff left behind to do. But in this situation, the only other real threat she has is the Sludge Belcher. So she really doesn't have much to follow up with. So sacrificing a 4/5 body here is a pretty big deal. But what she's thinking is, I need to be able to respond to an Emperor Thaurissan.
Yep, needs to be able to respond to him with thoughts. Nice, cool. And also just put this pressure on. Like, if your opponent's getting out of range with his Freeze Mage, he is just going to kill you in one turn sooner rather than... Well, not sooner, but soon enough.
Yes.
And so... And we can see the hand from Reynad is definitely a turn that if it picked up an Emperor would just be a winner.
Yeah, it would be absolutely insane because if you picked up, well, you have to pick up an Ice Lance and a Kobold if you want to get the true one-turn combo, I believe,
Yeah.
with the Emperor Thaurissan. However, this is already a massive amount of damage, but with both Healing Waves in hand for Eloise, it's going to be very, very scary because after you go with the Alexstrasza, Healing Wave lines up pretty much perfectly to heal you back up to 29 with no healing being wasted at all.
One thing this version sometimes did was a little bit of chip damage. Very little amounts, but like 2s and 4s.
Yeah.
And it's just not getting any of that. This is going to be full out burn you in the face if Reynad's going to win this one.
It is indeed, and he's definitely starting to get there with both Frost Novas as well. As soon as any respectable amount of damage comes down from Eloise, he's going to be able to slow that down quite significantly. And with Kel'Thuzad perfectly lining up on the following turn, I wouldn't be surprised to see Eloise just... Oh no, she played the Ancestral Knowledge on the last turn, so Kel'Thuzad cannot come down. However, the top deck of the second Ancestral Knowledge is interesting because you can draw something to do right now, but you're denying yourself Kel'Thuzad again on the following turn.
Right, and Kel'Thuzad obviously a card you'd rather like to have, just for the size as much as for the ability at this stage.
Exactly.
Of the proceedings. Yep. Just counted up, Reynad has 19 damage in hand. The most that he can do in one go, I believe, is a number. So the number of damage is 16.
9, 12, 16. Yes, I agree. And you cannot fit in a ping because that would cost you 9 mana. Yeah. So with a pickup of another Ice Lance, that would be 20 damage that you could do in one turn.
So already looking pretty good. Obviously, the reason he hasn't just going to slam Alexstrasza, well, maybe he will just slam Alexstrasza if he feels that's the best way. But there's a good chance he won't do that. He knows about the double healing wave in the deck.
Yeah, he does indeed. And you want to be able to concentrate the amount of damage you're dealing. Because if you Alexstrasza and then they just heal up, and then you're starting to fire off fireballs and frostbolts again slowly over the next 2 or 3 turns, there's a decent chance that the second healing wave will come down. But it could very well get to the point where Reynad just needs to say, right, I've seen the first healing wave, I just have to assume they don't have it, because if they do, I'd probably lose.
So doing it this way around forces Eloise to have the healing wave, but also basically just causes a distraction while he saves up the damage for the OTK. If you go for the one-turn kill anyway, which we thought he probably would, there's no downside to taking the chance that, hey, sometimes here she just doesn't have it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So I'm still going to save my OTK, and then maybe one time in 10, one time in 8 in this situation, I just win the game.
Doesn't win the joust there, which is a little bit unfortunate. It was unlikely that it would happen, given that the amount of high mana minions he plays is extremely low. Alexstrasza has been drawn, so the highest one would be Emperor Thaurissan at 6, and then evolved Kobold. So very likely that Eloise does end up winning that joust, which is very nice for her, because that extra 7 damage could be a very, very big difference.
Yeah, you can see now how she's managed her resources, obviously, saving that. There hasn't been many ways to not use them anyway, but saving the healing for the right time, saving the hex for the right time.
Yeah, going with the Ancestral Knowledge on the previous turn worked out very well indeed, because you get the Overload out of the way now when you definitely didn't want to be going for Kel'Thuzad anyway, sorry, and it also gave you the Hex that you needed to take out that Alexstrasza.
Okay, well, Reynad is not short of damage. I'm actually surprised he hasn't cycled one of these torches by now. Maybe he hasn't had a chance just to get the extra damage OTK going. But maybe he's felt that he didn't want to waste the damage. But I feel that maybe he could get one of these into his deck about now.
Maybe at this point he needs to start thinking about just firing off damage to face. However, if you're going with that plan rather than the true OTK, you need to be very afraid of dying. There's 10 damage on board, so it's actually a fair assumption that you're just dead. However, having said that, I don't know if there is a point of damage that you can do from hand in Eloise's deck. So I think you can...
Is there a weapon?
I don't think so. I think you can be 100% sure that your ice block would not be popped whether you froze or not.
Okay. Reynad there was having difficulty choosing whether to use the torch, which will be the consideration we were talking about, get the torch back into your deck, or whether to use the fireball and be mana efficient.
Yeah, I think overall you definitely want to be mana efficient, because even after the Emperor Thaurissan comes down, you're going to be tight on mana if you want to fit in an evolved Kobold in addition to that. And you will probably have the turns over the next turn or two to start shuffling your torches as well. And, you don't necessarily want to draw your Roaring Torches more than you want evolved Kobold and Emperor Thaurissan.
So, the number that casters have to learn at caster school. It's in hand right now.
So what can we see? We've got Fireball, 6, 9, 12, 16, 20 damage available for Reynad. So he is in that spot I mentioned earlier on. He is saying, if you don't have Healing Wave, I win. If you do, I'm in a very rough spot, so I'm just going to play the odds. You probably don't have it.
Right, seen one already means the chances of the other one are actually much lower than you would think, the way that the maths works out. I'm not going to go into that on this particular day, but yeah, people always overestimate the chance of their opponent having it. Except on this occasion, Eloise does have it, and she will sense the danger. I think she'll just do it now. You don't really need to be greedy with this.
So there was consideration to go for Roaring Torch there, because obviously you have enough damage to kill off your opponent right now, but shuffling the extra torch into your deck might have been pretty nice, because if they do have the Healing Wave, you want as much damage as possible to take them out. And this is actually a pretty nice spot from Reynad to get them down to 19, because if they heal for the full 14 with Healing Wave, which is very likely, then they're actually wasting 3 heal. So maybe you have enough damage after that, if you can pick up the Evolved Kobold, to simply finish them off. But if you are going to do that, you're going to have to find that other ice block as well.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he's just a bit loath to put the torch back into the deck so he can pick up his Emperor, so that he can pick up something else that you talked about, the Kobold. Those cards, and he wants to play it after he picks up the key cards there. That's the only reason for not shuffling back in at this point. And no, I can get on board with that. See who wins this very important joust. And predictably, Eloise wins it. Nothing to do with Reynad's RNG on this occasion, just because her deck is full of big things and Alex Straza has gone.
Yeah, it would be pretty unlucky for Eloise to lose that, especially as I believe she's running no minions that cost less than 4, which is pretty impressive to say the least.
That's actually a huge bonus with those Healing Waves.
Yeah, definitely, and it's going to be a consideration in her deck, especially as, you know, if you're running Barnes, you don't want to be putting Doomsayers and little things like and the Blood Mage Thalnos. Oh my lord, look at that combo.
KT-ception. Right, so both Healing Waves have gone. Reynad knows he has to do 30 damage and he will win the game. There's no more shenanigans going to happen. He has the Ice Block up.
Yep.
He has Blizzard in hand. How close can he get and how quickly?
Right, so if you go for Blizzard, Frostbolt, Ping, that's obviously getting in a hero power, which is nice. But maybe you have to keep your Frostbolts in hand, because obviously they're cheaper and they're much better with the Evolved Kobold.
Yeah, and the Ice Lance. You can't just...
Well, you can use one, and then obviously still you can use both Ice Lances on the same turn as the other Frostbolt.
So I think you win over 2 turns here if you're Reynad with reasonable draws. You have 14 with the Frostbolt Ice Lancers. You have 3 more with the Torch. That's 17. Any old ping is 18. You need 6. This is a whole chunk as well, though. If you fire it all at face, do you win next turn?
So you go... You can fit in...
Is it 22?
Not a ping. So that's 5 with each Frostbolt, so that's 10, 16, 22 damage.
Yeah, that's what I make it as well. And then
so
you've
just won.
Turn face and you win the game.
You have won at this point. There's nothing Eloise can do, because there is simply no healing and no secret destruction in the deck. This is Reynad's game.
Yep, he's going to play the Kobold. He's going to launch the cheapest spells in his hand at face for 22. And then he's going to do 3 damage next turn, and there's no healing. Just while we're talking about that, as Reynad does spot it, obviously, to address chat, this is not pre-recorded as such. The tournament is not live, but nobody, including us, apart from the players, knows the result.
Exactly. We are talking to you live, but we are casting over a pre-recorded video,
which is going out at the same time in China and worldwide as it is here.
Yes, exactly.
All right. So, Reynad spots it. I don't think there's any random effects that can help Eloise that I can think of, at least.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it, especially as she has absolutely no room on the board as well, and Ancestral Spirit isn't going to do it. And there wouldn't even be anything off of the Maelstrom Portal. She could, if she had room on the board, she could potentially go for Mistress of Mixtures, which would maybe save her, but yeah, there's no room on the board, so this is over.
Pew to the face, and Eloise struggling to find a win with this Shaman, and she's got to find one in the next 2 games or she will lose 3-2, and all the way through that game, it looked like Eloise was going to win it.
Yeah, really has not been performing for Eloise. So the last two decks that Reynad needs to win with are his Reno Lock, and then I believe his Paladin as well.
Yeah, that Paladin has been a problem for him, and I don't think it's as bad as maybe. Yeah, it's shown.
Yes, I agree.
It just always seems like he's got loads of outs and doesn't get any of them.
But the thing is, you have to think about it. If you are finding yourself in the position fairly often where you draw anything and it doesn't really do anything, can you really call that unlucky anymore? Or is that just the way that the deck goes? Like, if you are building a deck instead that the other players are more favouring with more Silverhand recruit synergy, maybe that's the way to go instead. And then you don't leave yourself in a position where you can even get these bad draws.
Yeah, I mean, the N'Zoth half of Reynad's deck is definitely working fine.
Yeah.
Every time he draws an anything, if that was the other N'Zoth, you're not allowed two N'Zoths, but if that was another N'Zoth, he would have been fine. But he has been drawing the N'Zoth minions and the anything sort of big spells, and they haven't meshed very well. That being said, it does seem like he's not drawing well with the deck as well.
Yeah, he is. I am saying that to be a little bit mean to him, but he is definitely getting a little bit unlucky, throwing away the Zombie Charvier and keeping the Bluegill Warrior. So he is this time thinking, right, I'm not even going to put myself in an opportunity where I can get a rubbish, anything can happen. I'm going to guarantee that I get at least a half-decent one.
Yeah, insight to his thinking as to how he's going to get through this wall of stuff that Eloise is going to begin setting up from about turn 4 or 5 onwards.
So, for Reynad, a pretty decent start to get things going, especially with the pickup of Haunted Creeper. You can curve out perfectly with 1-drop, 2-drop, Muster for Battle, and then coin into Quartermaster if it survives.
Yeah, that looks fantastic, but how good is Maelstrom Portal in this metagame?
Pretty good.
Seems absolutely insane, right? It's just going to destroy all the relevant minions on this next turn.
Ooh, now with the combination of potentially on turn 4 or 5 of going Bluegill Warrior into Coin Murloc War Leader for a 4 damage charger, and then all of a sudden, for 10 mana, your anything can happen is something at this point. Even if you get no more Murlocs, it's at least a play. It's bad, but it's something that can maybe push that little bit of charge damage you need to close out the game.
Right, and between now and turn 10, Reynad should pick up another Murloc. There's another one of each of these. There's a Finger, there's an old Murkai. There's 4 more Murlocs. So in the next 5 or 6 turns, he should pick up at least one more. And then it would be a case of actually the board would be vaguely intimidating at least.
It looks like for the moment, though, Reynad is just loading up on these Silverhand recruits, trying to get as much value as he can with one of his Quartermasters on the following turn. He is truly standing at half-mast with 2 of them.
So Eloise just... The thing is, she's got loads of ways to answer this board, but does she even care? Like, this board just doesn't really do a lot to her right now.
Currently, it doesn't, and I grant you that there are obviously way less Silverhand Recruit synergy cards in Reynad's deck in total, but there is the potential for the Quartermasters to come down and massively buff what is already on the board, and then all of a sudden you're in a much scarier spot. Do you then have to use a Volcano just on what is essentially a board of little rubbishy dudes that got buffed up out of the way? Because all of a sudden then your Lightning Storm only has a 50% chance to clear off every single one.
And this is the thing that everybody talks about, which is why they think that Paladin is at least pretty strong, as we say, a third Murloc, is that you do in general have to deal with pretty much every board of 1/1s. And because you're dealing with it, your opponent never even needs to use their threats. So they've always got their threats in hand, so you always need to deal with the 1/1s. It's this horrible vicious circle.
Yeah, absolutely. And Reynad here taking it a little bit slow, using the hero power to try and eke out as much value as he can. This has the double benefit of making it so that even if your board is cleared here somehow with perhaps another Lightning Storm, you have the combo between Murloc, the Bluegill Warrior, and Old Murkai. And it also sets up for a more powerful Quartermaster later on down the line. You definitely want to be hero powering as much as possible, because each one of these Silverhand recruits is far more powerful than it may seem at first glance.
Reynad has been abusing that throughout this game so far.
Very slow turn indeed for Eloise, which means Reynad can go all out on the Murloc synergies here if he wants to. It will be pushing forward +2. This will be a 6 attack Old Murkai.
Wow.
which is a lot of damage all of a sudden.
Yeah, he needs to be aware that she did nothing last turn, though, because he knows that everything in this deck will be
Right.
playable next turn. So every option that could possibly hurt him is probably in her hand right now. But yeah, this wide board, how's she going to deal with this without using Volcano? And if she does, Reynad can just do stuff again.
Yeah, exactly. There is the refill that Reynad needs after a big board clear. There is the potential for Eloise to go for Volcano into White Eyes, which is a pretty nice combo indeed.
It's not a full clear though either, right? It's
There's
likely
16
to be...
health. I just counted up. Yeah, there's 1 health over. Which, could very possibly be not one of the 1/1s. It will likely end up being a 3/3.
Yeah, the 2/5 or the 3/3s are likely to survive here. See which way it goes.
That's 1 Spiderling, 2 Spiderlings down. It's the Quartermaster. Better result for Eloise than it definitely could have gone. The Murloc surviving would have been absolutely terrible.
Oh, tow him just in the nick of time, especially with the Zombie Chow in hand.
So yeah, you can just go for the buff right now. Do you want to save it though? With Earth Elementals in the deck, Tarim is a real trump card later on down the line.
He is going to save it for later. That makes a lot of sense. Just deal with this the old-fashioned way by smacking a load of things into it that you don't really want to.
Yeah, makes sense, because you do need to save these cards to be a little bit more powerful. And now, because of the fact that Reynad kept his Bluegill Warrior earlier on in the game, he now has several fantastic top decks. Anything can happen would be perfectly fine here, with one of each of the Murlocs outside of Finja being brought back to life after the fact. And has he played a real Death Rattles? We've seen a Haunted Creeper and a Zombie Chow, which means N'Zoth is not particularly powerful as of yet.
Yeah, we haven't seen many at all. We've seen all the Murloc stuff this time around. So if Reynad's true to form, he'll draw N'Zoth anytime now.
Yeah, I would not be surprised at all. There we go. It's starting to get a little bit better now, though, at least.
So he's going to probably have to just pile everything in here. No, he's going to ignore Sylvanas. Okay.
So yeah, obviously you could have gone Murkeye and then kill everything off, but then you're passing the onus back over to the Shaman. You could obviously have gone with the Shredder in addition to that, so maybe that would have been a better play, but then it makes it a lot longer before you're going to be able to get any value out of your Quartermaster at all. So maybe the idea is just you get the value now while you can.
Yeah, I mean, you've put Eloise under some pressure here, getting her down to 16. It's not a huge amount because you have the Zombie Chow in play, but it is a little pressure, and you are preserving your better cards as well.
So Devolve here is interesting. You make 3 of these minions into Wisps, Murloc Tiny Fins, or Target Dummies. So there is the potential for Taunt to get in the way, but you're turning that Quartermaster into probably a slightly beefier minion.
Yeah, you want to pick up the 5 health first as well.
Oh yeah, of course.
May just be worth setting up a wall of stuff here. There's Barnes doing his thing. What does he summon? N'Zoth again. That's valuable information for Reynad this time. It wasn't last time, but this is going into turn 10, and he knows N'Zoth is not in Eloise's hand now.
Yeah, that is definitely something to consider. So he can perhaps take it a little bit slower, because he might not need to massively load up onto the board quite yet, because he doesn't need to be afraid of a huge swing turn from Eloise in the form of N'Zoth. However, having said that, there is still the ability to just go for massive turns even outside of that with Ancestral Spirit, Kel'Thuzad, Reincarnate, Cairn, Sludge Belchers. There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong.
Eloise valuing the clear over the 5 health there.
Doesn't hit any target dummies, which is pretty nice, because you do get a complete clear now.
Yeah, the other way she could have killed the Zombie Chow and gained the 5, but she's trusting her deck to just come out with a healing as and when.
You have healing, and you really just need board presence much more than you need healing at the moment.
Nicely worked.
So Reynad has put himself in a spot where the Sylvanas can't steal the Shredder at the moment, which is very crucial indeed, because that would be really, really bad for you. Giving your opponent, you can make it so there's a 100% chance to steal the mini-bot, because the Sylvanas Death Rattle will activate before the Shredder does. And putting this Ancestral Spirit on it is very nice.
Yeah, and
indeed.
Reynad's just had seen enough. I mean, the amount of value that Eloise was getting there was just becoming overwhelming. Reynad's seen enough. He knows that there's so much more going on. He's run out of threats. And Eloise takes it down and gets her second win. Reynad falls to 0-3.